The social contracts haven't just been broken, they've been burned.
Tell me more.
Welcome back to Tell Me More with me, CJ Quartlbaum. Tell Me More exists to help bridge the gap in our intergenerational workplace dynamics, build better leaders, and help us prepare for the future. Today, I'm going to talk to you about why and how Gen Z has redefined work-life balance. A little bit about me. I've worked with, managed, led, consulted, coached over 500 members of Gen Z, and I know this generation well. As a college professor, I taught over 500 students, and I know where they are, what they're thinking, and why they're thinking it. And I'm here to help you if you're a millennial, Xer, boomer, who's trying to figure out how to deal with this generation. I'm here to help you do that. It starts here with this redefining of work-life balance. Work is what you do. It's not who you are. I heard that line in the show Station 11. I think it was 1 or 2 seasons. It was a HBO Max show. No, this was before HBO Max. This was an HBO show that appeared on HBO Go the next day, a couple of years ago. One of those dystopian future shows. I honestly don't remember much about it, but that line in particular is stuck with me. It's just work. It's what you do. It's not who you are. Sometimes we need a reminder of who we are. It's easy for us to get wrapped up in work as identity. Historically, in many cultures, that's where the last names came from. It was what you did. You were a blacksmith, your last name is Smith. You were a baker, your name is Baker. In other countries, you'd be what's some like one with Johannesson, that was Johan's son. But in many, work was your identity marker. Now, as someone who comes from one of those hardworking immigrant cultures, it's very easy for me to get wrapped up in work. Work as identity. Am I producing enough? Am I creating enough value? I know many immigrant kids who often express this feeling that if they're not working, they're doing something wrong. We have this tendency in our overworked culture to not know how to relax. Probably explains why at 11 p.m. on a Monday night, I'm in my basement making this video for you because I don't know how to relax. The remnants of this culture still sit with us today, doesn't it? When we first meet someone at a party or a social engagement, one of the first questions we ask is, what do you do? It's almost as if who we are is entirely wrapped up in what we do for work, and Gen Z has resoundingly rejected this concept. I understand. The relationship between employers and employees have changed. The days of working for 40 hours and 40 years and retiring with a gold watch and a pension no longer exist. The days of starting in the mailroom and ending in the boardroom no longer exist. We've been told our entire lives that social security will not be there. Gen Z has inherited a very different world, a world where people are laid off at what feels like random sometimes. Algorithm-induced budget cuts that just chop people off for the preservation of the bottom line, with no care or regard for who is on the other side. Of course they're rejecting this. The social contracts haven't just been broken, they've been burned. Gen Z has inherited a world where everything costs more, but wages have roughly been the same since the 70s. The counter argument to this is often, if you look at the fields of like tech and finance, people are making more money than ever. And this is true, but for nearly every other field where the majority of people work in the Western world, those wages have not gone up. Company loyalty is no longer a thing. Good friend of mine, after 5 years of faithful service, showing up early, working late, taking on extra projects, doing the best he could to put his best foot forward and be a company man, laid him off without hesitation. Now, I don't know if you know anyone who works for Elon's companies, but apparently he tends to cut those in Doge-like fashion, just with a hacking knife, no rhyme or reason, just the sake of boosting the bottom line. What kind of world is this? Is this what we're entering into? Is this what we're clamoring for? Gen Z looks at this landscape and they say, no, thank you. Now, this rebellion shows up in all sorts of ways. A few years ago, there were a bunch of articles written about the phenomena of quiet quitting. And in reality, what these came down to are people have decided, I'm not going above and beyond. Now, many people will slack off at work, but for the most part, it was people saying, I'm going to do what is in my job description. I'm not doing more. I'm not taking on extra. I'm going to have boundaries and a life outside of work. And you know what? That is okay. The logic was simple. If these companies don't care about us, then why should we care about them? If they are going to treat me as just another number on a spreadsheet, then I'm going to act in turn. Gen Z is loudly shouting to us that not only do they reject the hustle and grind culture, but also they want different things. They value flexible work schedules. They value remote work. Now, you can make arguments about whether these things are good or bad. The answer is probably somewhere in the middle, but ultimately what Gen Z is signaling to us is that work is not all that they are. In fact, Gen Z is saying they want meaningful and impactful work when they do work. So it's not that they've rejected this concept of work as a whole and, they're this lazy generation that doesn't want to work. It's far from the truth. In reality, they are a generation that wants work that matters and they want to be treated like they matter. I see no issue with that. What you have as an organization is an opportunity. You have an opportunity to see where this generation is, where the next crop of workers are, and meet them where they are. Life is all about problem solving. Life is all about adapting to the changing landscape. When I consult and coach people in Gen Z, I tell them that the main thing that they are going to do in this life is figure it out. We have the opportunity to lead the way right now. How can we become organizations and people who retain and keep the best and the brightest of talent in Gen Z? We do that by being like the Lakers. Now, I say this to you as a Knicks fan, who I think actually represent the exact opposite of what the Lakers have done as an organization. Okay, we haven't had a championship in 50 years. As it stands, we are on the precipice of elimination from the Eastern Conference Finals, but it's our first time there in 25 years, which is more than we could have hoped for, so we rejoice anyway. But the Lakers, back on Kobe's last contract, 35 years old, they gave him a 2-year, $35.8 million extension. Nobody expected Kobe to live up to that contract. Kobe's knees knew he couldn't live up to that contract. But what that contract was a signal. It was a message to the rest of the league that if you come here, we will take care of you. The Lakers are a first-class organization that values its team members, and they take care of them. They don't just put you out to pasture like old buddy once you get too old. They're gonna pay you for that past performance, knowing that you won't be able to live up to it in the future. And lo and behold, a few years later, the greatest or second greatest player of all time, LeBron James, signed with them. You have this opportunity. What are the incentives that you can put forth for Gen Z to show them that, hey, if you come here, we are going to take care of you? Now, I'm telling you to do this within reason. What can you offer? Is it schedule flexibility? Is it opportunities for development? Because Gen Z is craving that. Show me that you care about me enough to have a plan for my future, a plan for my growth. Don't throw, a token $100 a year for some books and maybe a conference. Show me that you're going to invest in me. Maybe you can offer them freedom in the projects that they choose to work on, or maybe at least incentivize them to take on some side projects. But here's what you don't do. What you don't do is overpromise. Drew Hill said it best, I never make a promise that I can't keep. In the recruiting phase, it's real easy to get into that salesman mode and start selling promises. This is not the time to overpromise and guarantee on things you can't deliver on. This is not the time, the recruitment process, to start promising things that you can't deliver on, don't have the attention to deliver on, and don't have the ability to deliver on. Deal honestly with people. That's just a matter of respect. Do not sell people a dream in the recruiting process only for them to get there and find out it's a nightmare. Only for them to get there and find out that you have not been dealing honestly with them. Because what that is going to do for you is it will ruin your reputation. The Lakers have a reputation as a first-class organization for a reason. Because they go above and beyond for their stars. They do what they need to do in order to get the win, in order to get the pieces around. Now, they don't always make the right moves. Sometimes they trade a good young core for aging veterans because that's what their star player wants. But at the end of the day, they are trying. Contrast that with other organizations who will not be named in case we ever get an endorsement thing going, where they're cheap. They don't want to spend on the players. They don't want to upgrade the facilities. They don't want to hear criticism from the people who are out there in the field doing the work. If you want to attract and retain Gen Z, your reputation is going to matter. Are you the type to overwork people? Are you the type to not give them any freedom outside of work? Are you the type to frown upon their outside activities? Are you the type to not be who you've sold yourself to be? You sell the company as this big family environment, and yet you treat people like they are just numbers on a spreadsheet. All of this matters to Gen Z. And you have an opportunity to make your words match your deeds and bring in the best and the brightest and give them a different experience than what we've had previously. And once you have the talent, respect their boundaries inside and outside of work, and honestly have some for yourself. Work is what you do. It is not who you are. Therefore, if they do not want to show up early consistently for some random meeting you keep putting on the schedule, respect that. I don't care if they've got a 7 a.m. yoga class they don't want to miss, or their pottery club meets at 6 and they don't want to miss that, or they're just going to grab a drink with their friends, or they just want to get home. Respect their boundaries. Have some for yourself. Is this all that you are, what you do, 9 to 5, 9 to 7? You know, some of us work inordinate hours. Consider that impact that just respecting someone as a full person can have. Don't be threatened by their outside lives and hobbies. In fact, how about you figure out what are the ways in which we can leverage their unique skills, gifts, and abilities and desires outside of work for our good? I read the book Range a couple of years ago by David Epstein. I've mentioned it a few times on this now. But in this book, David Epstein talks about how something like 90% of Nobel Prize winners in science are also world-class artists. And that seems like a counterintuitive thought, doesn't it? You would almost think that if you're a Nobel Prize winner in science, science is all you do. Science is your life. And yet, what we find is that these people have an interest in something else, and they bring their knowledge from that thing, that world-class knowledge from that thing, into the main work that they do. Don't view someone's outside hobbies or skills, things as a threat. Instead, look at them as assets, tools, vantage points that they bring to the table that you don't already have. Now, I say that, and you might be thinking to yourself, CJ, I hear you, but this work, this thing that I paid them to do is their primary thing and should be treated as such. And in some sense, I'm not arguing with you. Work is important. What you pay your employees to show up and do is important, but I will push back on this idea that it's their primary thing. I mean, simply from a monthly accounting standpoint, it can't be. There's roughly 720 hours in a month. 160 of those at 40 hours a week go to work. But let's say we're working more than that. And let's say we are working 200 hours a month. That still leaves 520 hours to do with whatever they want to do. Work was never meant to, nor should it ever be, your primary thing. You are a whole person, and work is what you do. It's not who you are. And if your entire identity is wrapped up in this thing that at best is a third of your time, then you have some serious soul searching that you need to do. And that doesn't mean don't love your work. It doesn't mean don't be good at your work. It doesn't mean don't care about your work. But it does mean is that if this job was taken away from you, do you know who you are? Do you have something else that lights you up, that gets you going, that motivates you? Something else that you're good at, that you have competency in? Something that brings you joy? Because if you don't, and all it is work, I can tell you how that ends. It ends with you sacrificing your entire life, oftentimes for an organization that will cut you in a heartbeat, for something that can be so easily taken away from you, and from something that you honestly can't take with you when you die. I've talked about this a lot, but too many of us are so focused on building resume virtues that we don't build eulogy virtues. And I think if Gen Z has gotten anything right up to this point, it is the recognition, for the most part, because there's some things we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks, but for the most part, it is that the resume is not the most important thing in their lives. That when it's all said and done, who you were is more important than what you did. And I don't know if Gen Z understood this on purpose. Maybe it was just intuitive, but they're getting it. They're understanding it. I honestly think a lot of it comes from the pressure that they feel from kindergarten straight through college to build the perfect resume and go to the right school and get the right job, that by the time they hit 23, 24, 25, they are burnt out and tired. And so they're pulling back. Especially once you start working and you get that first 3% raise for cost of living and you're like, that's it? All this work and what I get is 3%? Nobody wants that. It's worth considering for you how you can empower and encourage Gen Z to leverage who they are as a whole person for the good of their job. But it's also worth considering how you can empower and encourage Gen Z to set healthy boundaries while still showing up and giving 110% at work. No one is encouraging slacking off. No one is saying that we expect less from them. But what we are saying is that this is just a piece of the puzzle of their identity. And maybe you're thinking to yourself right now, CJ, I hear you, but life is all about work, and work is the only thing that matters. And I've had people say this to me, because I've often had this dream for a long time now of my life being about more than work, about finding fulfillment and joy and satisfaction in more than what I do. And of course, the reconciling of that is we got to eat. We got to pay bills. And climbing the corporate ladder is not by accident. There is some intentionality there. There's some sacrifice there. But I never wanted to be the person who gave up my family, who gave up my soul, who gave up my joy for the sake of ascension. And maybe you're sitting there watching this from the C-suite, and this video came across your desk by accident, and you're like, nope, I'm good. And I say, cool. Keep going the way you're going and let me know how that works out for you. Let me know in the end, was it the resume or the eulogy virtues that mattered more? Because what do I know? I'm just some guy from